In today's reading from Judges 12 to 16, we find the very familiar story of Samson, the Superman of the Old Testament. But don't make the mistake of thinking that this is primarily a story of a powerful hero who uses his mighty strength to defeat the big bad Philistines. That's only part of the story. The real story is the God who is merciful and faithful to keep his promises to his people. The God who is passionate about making his name known among the nations, even if he has to work through a self-centered, foolish young man in order to do it. Samson's life was actually a picture of the whole nation of Israel during the time of Judges, someone who lived his life by just doing whatever seemed right in his own eyes. The story begins with a familiar scene. Israel had turned away from the Lord and began worshiping other gods. In response, the Lord handed them over to the Philistines, who oppressed Israel for 40 years. Unlike other times, though, we're not told that Israel even cried out to the Lord for help. In his mercy and in his compassion, he just came and offered it. The Lord sent an angel to the mother of Samson, and he told her that she would give birth to a son, and that he would begin to deliver Israel from the Philistines. And in order to make that possible, he told her that she must set this boy apart and dedicate him to the Lord from the day of his birth. They took what was called a Nazirite vow, and in order for him to remain pure and dedicated to the Lord, they had to agree to do 3 things. Number 1, he wasn't allowed to take any wine or strong drink. Number 2, he wasn't allowed to eat anything that was unclean according to Jewish law. And number 3, he was never allowed to cut his hair. So Samson grows up, and it says at the end of chapter 13 that the Lord blessed him, and that the Spirit of the Lord began to stir in him. Well, the Lord gave Samson incredible physical strength, so much that one time he killed a lion with his bare hands. But even though he fought with the power of the Lord, he didn't walk in the wisdom of the Lord. And even though the Lord gave him great strength, Samson had an incredible weakness when it came to women. In chapter 14, Samson sees a beautiful young Philistine woman, and he goes to his father and says, "I want her for my wife. Get her for me." The reason? She looks good to me. Samson later holds a great feast, and he makes up a riddle, and he makes a foolish bet with some men that they wouldn't be able to guess the answer to the riddle. But his wife entices him to give her the answer, and then she goes and tells the men. Well, in his anger, Samson goes and kills 30 men so that he would have what he needs to pay the debt. And then they responded by taking the woman and giving her to another man. Well, then he got even more angry, and he gets 300 foxes and ties their tails together, sets them on fire, and releases them in the Philistines' field. Well, now they send an army to capture Samson, but he single-handedly kills 1,000 Philistines with nothing but the jawbone of a donkey. Years later, Samson is spending the night with a prostitute. The Philistines come and surround the place where he is, and they wait by the city gates so that they can kill him in the morning. But Samson gets up at midnight, goes to the gate, pulls the gate up by its post, puts the gates on his shoulder, and carries them away. So every time Samson made foolish decisions, he managed to escape by using his amazing strength that the Lord had given him. But then he fell in love with a woman named Delilah, and the Philistines gave her big money to go and discover the secret of Samson's amazing strength. Well, Samson thinks the whole thing is like a game, and so 3 times he lies to Delilah and tells her the wrong thing. And every time the Philistines are waiting to attack him, but he breaks free. Then Delilah cries to him and said, "If you really loved me, you would tell me the truth." And then foolishly he tells her that he had made a vow to the Lord, and if he cuts his hair, then he'll lose his great strength, it'll be gone. So while he slept, Delilah cuts his hair. And this time when they attack, Samson wasn't able to escape, because the Spirit of the Lord had left him. The Philistines captured him. They bound him with chains. They gouged out his eyes, and then they put him in prison. Well, one day sometime later, the Philistine rulers held a great feast in order to offer sacrifices to their god, Dagon. And they brought out Samson in order to mock him publicly and to declare that their God had given them victory over Samson's God. Well, Samson prayed that one more time the Lord would give him a big burst of strength. But even in these last moments, it wasn't about the Lord. Samson just wanted personal revenge for what they had done to him. But the Lord had a purpose to fulfill through Samson, and so he kept his promise to judge the Philistines and to begin to deliver Israel from them. He gave Samson strength one more time, and Samson pushed on the main pillars of the temple, and the whole building came crashing down, killing Samson and 3,000 leaders of the Philistines. Samson's life reminds us that God is always faithful to keep his promises, no matter how flawed his people might be. And Samson was really flawed. Yes, he had incredible God-given strength, but he totally lacked godly wisdom and godly character. The Spirit of the Lord often came upon him, but he never surrendered his life to allow the Spirit of God to work in him. Samson's life should be a warning to us that experiencing the power of God doesn't mean that we're living a life that's pleasing to God.